What's up, everyone? Tera Roberts here with 444. Buckle up and get ready to debate and talk about the most divisive players in fantasy football in 2023. We're talking about guys that fantasy managers are either 100% on or doing a full fade. Let's kick things off with a hot one and talk about Bijan Robinson. You will meet two types of fantasy managers this offseason. The one who is going in guns blazing, ready to draft Bijan 5th overall, and the one who thinks that Atlanta will be a committee and that Tyler Algier will take a decent chunk of work and it will limit Bijan's upside. And there's good supporting evidence behind both sides of the spectrum. For Bijan to pay off as a first-round ADP, he does need to have a Saquon Barkley-esque type of rookie season. Saquon had 261 attempts, just over 1,300 rushing yards, 11 rushing touchdowns, plus 91 receptions for over 700 yards and 4 touchdowns. Okay, technically there is some leeway in there, but he does in fact need to hit double-digit rushing touchdowns and have over 50 receptions. But that's not unheard of for a rookie to achieve this given the right circumstances, and Bijan fell into arguably the best possible scenario to achieve these goals. Atlanta was first in rush attempts, third in rushing yards, 10th in rushing touchdowns, and 4th in yards per attempt. The Falcons are led by a coach who has shown he will not veer from his run-heavy offense. It's a fair point that Tyler Algier will be a strong contributor. It's kind of impossible for him to not be. The Falcons had a total of 559 attempts last year. There will factually be other backs involved in this offense, but even 50% of the Falcons' overall attempts would still be a highly productive season for Bijan. But at such a high ADP, it is a controversial pick, but I think it is worth the risk. In drafts where I have a pick between 7 and 12, and guys like Tyreek and Travis Kelce are off the board, I am grabbing Bijan with confidence. Feel comfortable with Bijan as your RB1. Moving on to the next player. If there is one specific player who will always be on the most divisive players in fantasy football, it's whoever is the starting running back for New England, and this year it is Rhamondre Stevenson. Trusting a New England running back has typically been a surefire way to end up enraged on Sundays. Bill Belichick prefers to utilize a committee, and the only way that Patriots running backs have really seen success is by excelling in one key role or through injury. Despite that fact, Stevenson is being drafted as a top 12 running back with confidence, leaving half of the fantasy community chomping at the bits to draft a player who could be discounted for his legitimate top 5 upside, and the other half of the fantasy community is avoiding Stevenson because New England will bring in some veteran running back or make Pierre Strong the third down back. I have been a big Rhamondre Stevenson supporter in the past, but honestly, I don't find myself taking him in most of the early drafts that I'm doing. Some of that is related to wide receivers being drafted around him being my personal preference, but at this point, it feels like New England is definitely adding a back in free agency, and Stevenson's value will be very dependent on the type of back that they add. I'm avoiding Stevenson until there is clarity on who the Patriots are adding. This next player has been so divisive that I think we've reached the point where we can categorize people as Isiah Pacheco truthers or Isiah Pacheco haters. It is one or the other. Pacheco took over the Chiefs' backfield in Week 10, and from that point through the end of the season, Pacheco had over 600 rushing yards. To put that in perspective, his per-game rate would have given him a top 10 season in average yards per game. Pacheco averaged a strong 4.9 yards per carry on the season. He was a monster on the ground. But what makes him so divisive is that he had 13 receptions on the year. And some running backs can overcome lack of receptions, but the problem is that when you get in the red zone, Patrick Mahomes loves being the guy to score. In fact, no quarterback scored more points in the red zone than Patrick Mahomes, and it wasn't even close. So combine that with shaky lack of receptions, and things start to get a little bit worrisome for Pacheco. If Pacheco could manage to get just a sliver of running back receiving work, just a sliver, he could hit. And given the full workload that he will have over the course of the season, the opportunity will be there. I don't mind taking that risk on him. His ADP is dropping because we are hearing more and more hype around Chiefs players like Generic Prince. Pacheco is a solid low-end RB2 who has potential to take off as an RB1. I think it's fine to target him in fantasy drafts. Now, I've given you a few running backs, although I could certainly go on at that position, but let's talk about one of the most divisive quarterbacks of 2023, Lamar Jackson. And by default, we'll also talk about his pass catchers because there is no way around it. The Ravens receivers can't thrive if Lamar Jackson doesn't bounce back. Lamar Jackson has been one of the most coveted fantasy assets since 2019, his sophomore MVP season where he finished as QB1. But ever since that glorious season, it's felt like fantasy managers have been chasing a ghost. Jackson has struggled with injury, seen a drop in pass attempts, yards, and touchdowns, and a dip in rushing touchdowns on top of that. And after a dramatic offseason of contract battles, Jackson is now the locked-in QB for the Ravens with a new offensive coordinator, former Georgia Bulldog Todd Monken. Now, Monken is reportedly opening up the offense, putting Jackson in control, and looking to take him back to that Louisville version of Lamar Jackson that absolutely traumatized defenses on the ground and through the air.
What's been done here in the past in terms of running the football and controlling the game, and yet maybe bringing things up, in terms of more up to speed, I guess, or what I'm used to, which is maybe a little more open sets, a little bit more space.
I mean, just being able to throw the ball down the field. We sometimes, we can't. Running can only take you so far, and I feel like with this new era of teams and offenses in the league, I feel like we need that, and Coach Todd Monken, what I'm seeing his offense so far is looking tremendous.
If there is a season for Lamar Jackson to get back on track with that MVP type of production, it's this year right here. Jackson's ADP is very friendly. Mark Andrews is getting a nice discount. And out of the receiving core, Zay Flowers has legitimate upside to take off and potentially be the most productive rookie receiver. I'm in, they're divisive, but I absolutely love it. Let's wrap things up with one more player that you are either chomping at the bits to draft on a discount or full fading. Kenneth Walker. The Seattle backfield has got to be one of the most uncomfortable and unpredictable running sack situations in 2023, and it happened so fast. Walker took over after Rashad Penny suffered a season-ending injury and absolutely dominated the Seattle backfield. Walker averaged 16 fantasy points per game weeks 6 through 18, but despite that success, the Seahawks still drafted Zach Charbonnet. Walker is so divisive because we literally have no clue how Pete Carroll intends to use these running backs. The most we've gotten out of him all offseason long is how much he likes Kenny McIntosh. So because of this ambiguous backfield, Kenneth Walker's ADP has dropped all the way down to RB17. If Walker remains the RB1, that is a big discount. But some fantasy managers have concerns over Walker's advanced metrics and receiving profile and believe that Zach Charbonnet will take over as the third down back and eat away at goal line opportunities and possibly take over the backfield. On top of all that, Walker is dealing with an injury, and if you know one thing about Pete Carroll, we will never get 100% clarity on an accurate timeline. And that means that Zach Charbonnet gets to show off as the RB1 in training camp. At this point, I'm on the side of avoiding this backfield and just letting it be someone else's headache. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe and like the video and comment below and let me know whether you agree or disagree on these divisive players. Are you in or are you out? And stick around for more fantastic content.